May all beings be happy. May all beings be healthy. May all beings be free from harm. May all beings love life. May all beings awaken. Welcome to another Cuke Audio podcast. I'm DC Puba of Cuke Audio and Cuke Archives, doing our bit to help preserve the legacy of Shunryu Suzuki and those whose paths cross his. And anything else that comes to mind. I pray that you and yours are safe and comfortable, free from economic hardship, and able to get out and do whatever it is you want within the limitations of the universal precept of do as little harm as possible. Now, today we have a guest, one John Burney. And John came to the San Francisco Zen Center in 1973. Very interesting, as he will tell you how he got there. And actually his whole path is interesting. He'll talk about the people who have been important in his life. Richard Baker, Mike Murphy, the owner of Esalen, Ann Armstrong, Adyashanti, Brother David Steindl-Rast, Papaji, Punjaji, Robert Adams, and others. He was a Alexander Technique therapist for years, and he's had a very interesting path. His website is inspiredaliveness.com, and he has many students now that just go to his website and it'll show you. And, just listen to the podcast, and he'll talk about what he teaches. But now let's have our pause to meditate. So when you hear the bell, if you're of such a mind, hit pause and meditate or whatever for as long as you wish. And when you're ready to come back, hit unpause. And we'll be here to hit the bell to end the meditation or whatever, and we'll give John Burney a call.
David?
John.
Hey. I just want to say I'm sorry that it's taken me so long to get here with you. I'm just glad we're here, and I'm delighted that we're going to be talking and whatever we're doing.
Yeah, same here. And now it didn't matter. It took your time, because if you hadn't have taken your time, we wouldn't be talking now.
Well said.
Yeah. So what are you up to right now?
Well, in my work, or just sort of, we're I don't know if I mentioned to you. Is this recording now? Are we on?
Yeah, it recorded from when you said hi or whatever.
Okay. All right. I love it. I'm busy. I'm actually busy with my work, which keeps growing and developing after sort of being in private practice and public teaching for 43 years now. And I'm more I just love what's happening. It's so fulfilling, and so I am working with individuals one on one. I'm doing it online now since the pandemic. I used to do it in person, and part of me wants to go backwards in history and sort of do an overview, but how did you get here kind of thing, right? But anyway, so how it looks now is that I have a full practice of meeting with people, and my assistant usually schedules out 3 months at a time, and we have a waiting list and stuff. And so I'm very booked with private work, and then I teach publicly as well online with regular gatherings that are worldwide attended on Saturdays from a couple hour gatherings that happen 2 or 3 times a month. And then I also lead online retreats, which last about 3 days, and I do about 3 of those a year. So I have a small team of dedicated students who are mostly volunteering and wanting to help out of gratitude for the benefits that they've been getting in the work that I've been offering. And I've really been blessed throughout my entire career like that, because I've never tried to make anything happen. And everything that did happen with teaching retreats and public teaching for over, retreats for 35 years probably, published 2 books. I didn't do any of that. It was people wanted to do it and they wanted to help me, and I said, okay. And so it's just been evolving. It keeps evolving. That's what's so amazing for me. And so I would say that what I'm realizing in my own life and what I see works supporting others is the perspective of what I would call your natural evolutionary unfoldment, which is really unknown to you and everyone else. It's not known to your psychologist or your psychic or whatever. It's a much deeper, mysterious process. And I think as we get older, I'm 71 now. I don't know how old you are, David, a little older maybe. But anyway, since we were brother monks at Tassajara and Zen Center way back, the good old days. Loved every minute of it. It's amazing to me to see how it all miraculously brought me right here. And it's always been here, right? And so the more that I have learned to align with that flow or that connectedness, deeper connectedness, the more my intuitive clarity just got me to take the next step, even though I didn't really know. And I think what's so interesting about, our Zen background, which is so right on, is that beginner's mind, Zen mind, is a mind that is open, ready, and available, and doesn't have a preconceived idea about what's happening. It's not projecting one's assessments, judgments, conclusions, comparisons, and all that onto what's right here, right? And so when one begins to live in clarity, in other words, without the projection of the identified egoic self, one begins to experience aliveness and fulfillment in a way that's each moment, not when you get from point A to point B. Not that there's anything wrong with getting from point A to point B, but it's ultimately what's the point of life. And I agree with the Dalai Lama that is to be happy. And I think, well, how do you get happy when you don't have what you want and so forth, right? Or you have what you don't want, or trying to fix it, figure it out, get rid of it. And so this is all basic Buddhism, obviously, but it's also right on. I think what I learned anyway in all the years I was at Zen Center in Tassajara, and all the years I did many more years of Buddhist practice, and I won't go into all that unless you want to, but all of the background I had brought me finally to the deeper recognition of our true nature that had opened for me at 16. I grew up on the peninsula here, south of San Francisco, and I was I was a concert violinist, performing concert violinist throughout my childhood, very intense schedule of that, plus wanted to go to Stanford Med School, so I got straight A's and wanted to do that. And then at 16, which was a volatile year, 69, there were a lot of things going on here. There was a lot of cultural movement, as you well know, in the 60s. And I was questioning everything. And that inner process of questioning led me to an experience that I had at that age that completely transformed my whole life. And I had nothing in the background because I wasn't religious. I didn't have any religious really beliefs or background. I was more science-based in my interest in life and sort of empiricist, you know. I just had more of that science kind of mind, which I still do. And so I'm not really a believer or a follower, never have been. It's more like, let's see what works, right? And so this experience that opened up that completely, well, it quite simply, it gave my life meaning, which it hadn't had, not in some intellectual sense, just profound sense of meaning. It gave me a sense of direction. To this day, whatever that presence essence is, continues to force me to move in that direction, and any resistance to it doesn't work. And back then, it saved my life because I didn't think I could continue. I was so stressed out, actually, with everything I was doing. I didn't see the point, and so I really, in my own way, in my own inner process, had a very long, I don't know how many months, I was in this inner churning of, I have to find out what this life is about, really, because I just didn't see the point in burning myself out the way I was. And I looked around at successful people, and they didn't look particularly appealing to me. Knowing them and meeting them, they didn't seem happy. And so this was got me started. You know what's funny? I don't know if I told you this, is that I was back then. I'd had this awakening, and I didn't know what it was. It wasn't until I met Ann Armstrong when I was 20, and I was just starting to practice at Zen Center. About a year after Suzuki Roshi passed away, I felt his energy. I felt his presence, and but I graduated early from high school, and somebody who knew my parents or whatever met me when I was 11. They heard me play the violin, and I got this invitation by them to go live on a kibbutz, and I didn't know anything about it, and I looked into it, and I thought, well, this is interesting. It's communal, right? Communal living. And it's like, and I was starting to get interested in meditation and yoga, and I was meditating already. I was doing about 3 hours of yoga a day. I've been meditating pretty regularly since I was 18. And I was interested in what they called karma yoga, which was yoga for work for work's sake, not for reward, not for an outcome, but just for the sake of work, right? And I thought, wow. So I thought, if I go live on a kibbutz, maybe I'll have that experience, right? Where it would be really valuable. And so I went, and it did happen. And I was really blown away by it. I loved it. I loved the experience of just being in a work team and working, my rear end off. and, I was 18. I took a leave of absence. No, I didn't take a leave of absence. I actually graduated early from high school. And I was out of school for about 9 months before I went to college. And so I had 6 months there, and then I traveled through Europe and Greece and stuff. And back in the day when you could basically do it for nothing, which is what I did, and I had lots of experiences, but that experience of that was so potent that I was looking for a spiritual community when I was around 20. And I'd had this psychic reading with Anne, who I think she was close with Suzuki Roshi, and other people, and I just been referred to her just strangely by a couple of people, and I thought it was all BS and had no interest in doing it. But I had $100 to my name, and she was out in Sacramento, and I drove out to Sacramento, and I paid $50 for the session, and it was one of the most important meetings of my entire life. And she was.
What'd she say?
Oh boy, she said a lot. In fact, she even turned the tape off. She didn't want some of it on the recording. But she acknowledged what happened to me and said, you had an enlightenment experience, authentic. And and she said, and it's going to take basically a long time for it to integrate. And that's right. and it didn't certainly eliminate suffering. What it did was it made me realize I was suffering and that I had a lot of work to do. So I was really interested in the inner journey and working on myself. That's what really became very alive for me. So I was at UC Santa Cruz, and I took a leave of absence. A friend of mine invited me to hitchhike across the country. And so I took a leave of absence, and we put on 50-pound backpacks and hitchhiked across the country and had lots of adventures, hopping freight trains. And I ended up as a resort island chef on Captiva Island off of Fort Myers, Florida. If you could believe that. And but I came back from this trip, and I was at my parents' home.
Where?
Hillsborough. In Hillsborough, and my mom was in England studying acupuncture with Jack Worsley. It wasn't legal in this country yet, and she ended up becoming responsible for acupuncture being legal in the United States, and was considered in China to be the mother of Chinese medicine in America. And I have a picture of her. I may have shown it to you when I saw you in Bali recently, of her with Jerry Brown when he was first governor, when she got the law passed. And so she was in England studying acupuncture. My dad was having Mike Murphy over for dinner. They were buddies, Mike, and he was, the owner and founder of Esalen. And my dad was Mike's golf guru. My dad was an amazing golfer, and they were introduced by a mutual friend who was a psychologist, and Jerry Smith, taught at Esalen. And he introduced Mike and my parents, so they became friends, Dulcie and Mike and my parents, and I knew them, just socially kind of. And so I'd never been to Esalen. My parents had been down there, but I'd never been down there. And so Mike was over for dinner, and I'm 20. I just got back from hitching across the country. He goes, so, John, what are you doing with your life? I said, I'm looking for a spiritual kibbutz. And he says, well, why don't you go to the Zen Center? I go, what's that? I didn't know what it was. I didn't know anything about it. He says, he says, I'll call Dick and Ginny. I didn't know who they were. I said, no, don't call anybody. I said, I'll just show up. I'll check it out. And I think Zen Mind Beginner's Mind may have just come out.
No, it came out in 1970.
Oh, well, this was 73. So it had come out already.
Yeah.
So it was already out. So he told me about the book. I got the book, and it blew me away. And I remember reading it, David, and I said, if this is what's happening there, I'm there. And then all I had to do was be a guest student and eat Ed Brown's bread, and I was in. I said, this is the bread. Are you kidding? No, it was the best bread I ever ate in my life. And so that's what got me there. But I just thought it was funny that because of my dad's golf game, I discovered Buddhism. That's the truth. And I know, so this is what I mean, that I didn't have anything to do with it, right? It just sort of like, go there, do this. Okay. It's kind of like, that's kind of how it unfolds and or how it has. And so today now I have, I've actually gotten a trademark with my work because I've spent 43 years developing the work, or I haven't been developing it, but it's been developing through me. It started out as, I became an trained certified Alexander teacher in 1981. I learned Alexander because I had so much trouble sitting zazen with my back and my knees because of injuries I'd had, and I had a lot of trouble with it. And I knew that if I wasn't going to be on that zafu, I was going to go crazy. So I had to meditate. So I was introduced to Frank Ottewell, who I took lessons with. And then when I came back from Tassajara, I decided, because I had a natural healing gift with my hands, which I'd always had, that I was going to see if I can get into the training program. And I got accepted, and I did the 3-year training program. graduated in 81, and I opened my practice. And because of my music background, I ended up having a full-time successful practice as an Alexander teacher for 30 years, and I worked with many, very famous performers, and was in that world. And so I'd have people coming and working with me. I remember I had an opera star from Europe whose husband was directing the opera orchestra. He was the director and the guest opera director for a season, and his wife was here to do a concert with the symphony. And so he said, you should go see, because he was having sessions with me, and he said, you should go see Bernie for Alexander. So she came to have Alexander. What I didn't realize, David, was happening was that even though I was doing Alexander technique, this deeper consciousness that had opened at 16 was playing out. I didn't have anything to do with it, right? It's just this presence or whatever. So people were having awakenings in my Alexander practice. This kept happening. And I thought, oh my God, and she had it was huge. And this kept happening. And so I thought, well, I need to learn more stuff. So I didn't understand what was happening.
Hey, why don't you explain what the Alexander technique is?
Sure. Alexander was from Tasmania, which is, is it an island off Australia? I don't know, somewhere down there in Australia.
Yeah, it's one of the provinces or whatever of Australia. It's an island on the far south.
Right. And so he was a Shakespearean actor at the turn of the century. And he was down there. And so, but he was doing Shakespearean soliloquies, monologues, right? And so he'd get up on stage and he'd lose his voice. He wouldn't be able to speak. And so this was, let's just say, not so good for his career, say the least. And nobody could help him. He went to doctors. They gave him throat spray and tell him to rest and not do it. So as long as he rested, wasn't a problem. But once he got up there and performed, he would lose his voice. So he came up with this question. He asked himself this question. I wonder if there's something I'm doing with the way I'm using my body that's causing this problem. And he got a 3-way set of mirrors, and he observed himself for 9 years. Don't you love it? And he discovered a natural law of functioning in mammals, which became the foundation of the Alexander technique. Nicholas Tinbergen, who won the Nobel Prize for Physiology and Medicine in 1972, devoted his entire acceptance speech to the discovery of Alexander. 2 of the famous clients that Alexander had that he transformed health-wise were Aldous Huxley and John Dewey. And interesting enough, when I was introduced to Jean Klein, who became a very important teacher for me, and we became very close, he was very excited that I was an Alexander teacher because he knew Alexander in Europe and had read all of his books and thought he was right on. Because Alexander's discovery, and this is why so many Zen people were interested in it, was basically Zen in the structural, integrative way. It was amazing. So the people that really got the transmission from Alexander, one of them was Marjorie Barstow, who I studied with in Lincoln, Nebraska for a couple of summers, and she'd come to San Francisco in the training program I was doing. She was 90, David, this little thing. I should send you a picture of her working on me. She was 90, and she'd be working with 70 people all day long standing. Remember everybody she worked with and everybody's name. She had been about, and she put her hands on you. It wasn't like she was doing anything, and you get a full body transmission of unbelievable energy, and your whole structure would realign. Boom. It was unbelievable. It was an altered experience, but she was plugged in to the source, right? And you can call it whatever you want. Buddha nature, true nature, divine consciousness, there's a million names for God. There's a million names. But let's just say it's a natural part of our reality. I mean, if you look at, there are cave paintings in Africa that were done 17,000 years ago depicting Kundalini and connection to the source. So this is really our true nature. It's really our nature to experience connectedness. So my work supports people in, let's just say, cultivating the way they're living, the way they're paying attention to themselves, their life, and so forth, that actually brings forward consciousnesses. So I call it, when people say, so what do you do, John? I don't say, well, I'm a healer and a meditation teacher, which is like, that has a certain kind of pigeonhole that's usually put in. I usually say I teach inner consciousness development. And we go, oh, that's interesting. What's that? I said, well, it's a branch of health and wellness, right? And so my work, which I've rebranded now, trademarked, is called Inspired Aliveness. And it's a unique and integrated approach in inner consciousness development, self-healing, and transformation. So it has nothing to do with whether people have beliefs or they don't have beliefs, or whether they have practices or don't, because everyone is really, it's for anybody who is interested in being more fulfilled and happy in their lives. And that's what I'd say. So it's really, it's what you understand, I think, and what we understand from our background, but I'm interested in bringing it out in the world in a way that isn't limited to whether you have beliefs or not, whether you're religious or spiritual or not. Because I think people are, they're addicted to looking at their phones for a reason. They're avoiding themselves, right? They're avoiding what they don't want to feel. And so I think that how does someone finally turn towards what they don't want to experience? And my experience is that you're forced into it. People don't do it willingly. I think as long as people can avoid, they're going to, right? Mm-hmm. And I don't judge that at all. In fact, I have a great deal of compassion and empathy for it. So it's really about learning as, like I love the work of Richard Schwartz that he's doing with internal family systems, that it's not just enlightenment. I think awakening, which Suzuki Roshi said, practice begins with enlightenment. Exactly. How can you truly practice when you're just doing a technique or a form, and there's no essence there for you? It's just holding a mudra, following your breath, counting your breaths, whatever. That's fine. That's great. But I remember talking to Aiken Roshi about this once. Or no. He was giving a talk at the Buddha Hall, and he said, enlightenment is an accident, but Zazen can make you accident prone.
Yeah.
I really like that.
Yeah.
I really like
you
that.
know where he got it? He got that from Rajneesh. And Rajneesh got it from Krishnamurti.
I love Krishnamurti. I actually got to see him when my mom and I went and saw him in San Francisco at the Masonic Auditorium when I was 18. And I have to say, that guy's energy blew me away. He was so, so vital. And when I read Freedom from the Known, that book was one of the most important books I'd ever read.
Mm.
And he was right on. He was right on. Interesting. Yes, exactly.
Yeah, I had to do a whole research thing on it because people were attributing it to Suzuki Roshi. And I said, no, that's not him. And
well, thanks for telling me that. That's great to know.
Yeah.
Yeah. Also, the thing I love about Krishnamurti is that when Annie Besant and the Theosophical Society wanted him to be the avatar, he finally left them and said, I'd rather be a truck driver. And I thought, now that's my kind of guy. I think ultimately it's really, as we used to say, it's really real when you come in the back door, not when you come in with fanfare and waving a flag, right? And so it's like, look at me, I'm meditating or whatever. But it's like, I think it's when you don't have a choice that you finally face yourself. And so I feel like what's really important, since it's so hard to face our relative conditioned selves, but depending on how much trauma one has, or disability, or hardships as one has, which a lot of people do. I mean, there are plenty of people who are, fairly fortunate, or there are people who are fortunate and privileged, but I'd say a majority of people are struggling just to survive, and having a pretty hard time of it these days. So I think anything that can help them live their life more fully, even if it's as limited as it might be, that's valuable. So people in my work, what's happening is that there's so much gratitude and appreciation. I have to keep working. I mean, one of my students who's very successful said, John, I don't think you're not going to be allowed to retire. It's not going to happen. And so I have to say that the truth is I love showing up in my work. I love working with people and what happens, because I'm not doing it and they're not doing it, but it's happening. And I don't really identify as a teacher, even though I'm in that role. I really feel like I'm a student, and I'm a pretty good one, and I'm learning all the time, and I'm discovering all the time. That's really what I'm trying to help people not get caught in believing their identified beliefs. I think those become prisons, really, that people live in.
Yeah.
And so it's a fascinating journey, and I think having compassion and empathy and forgiveness and gratitude and all these things are very, very, very important, and learning how to work with our parts, like I was saying with the internal family system stuff. I've always done parts work and always thought it was very, very important for integration, for really being a balanced person. I'm going to go see Brother David in about 2 weeks. And he's 98, and we've been very, very close for 51 years. We wrote to each other for a good 18 years after I met him. And then when I was Baker Roche's assistant, I got to know him a lot better when he'd be in town. And then I ended up going down to the Hermitage where he was living. I did retreats there. And then he ended up inviting me to come and stay with him at Esalen a couple of times after Dick Price died. And, we stayed, I think, in Mike's house there, and Mike Merz, and we spent a week at a time, a couple of times. And then he had me come down and help him run a program for what he was teaching, his program at Esalen with movies and stuff. And then I went on a cruise with him and friends of his in Europe back in 2006. And we've just stayed and he wrote endorsements to both of my published books, beautiful endorsements. And he has been probably one of the most, and maybe the most important person that I've been very close to for all these years. And he taught me back when I was probably 20, the purpose of spirituality is to become fully human. And I thought, now isn't that right on? And so what a beautiful example for those of us who have known him and really been, and I didn't know what love was until I met him. I didn't know what being loved unconditionally was until I'd spent time with him. And he didn't have to say one word. It was just after I'd have been with him, every time I thought of him, I would start weeping. Really weeping. Even today. And we're good. We're connected profoundly. I know that we're connected even when we are not in this form. And so, and God willing, he will be fine, and, we'll get there. In 2 weeks, it's like, oh my God, I can't wait. And I'll be great to go to his original monastery in Austria, which I'm sure is very beautiful and special. And so that's what's coming up, and that's like a pilgrimage. And then I'm going to be in Prague and Vienna and London, and I have all these students in Europe who I've never met, who I've been working with online for years. And I'm going to be having dinners with them, and it's going to be so wonderful. I'm just so excited about this trip, just to be with people, because I just love being with people. I'm a people person, and I love hanging out. So that's what's going on. I'm really busy, and I'd like to be a little less busy, actually. But that's kind of a simple overview, I guess.
Yeah. Now I have a couple of questions here.
Sure.
You practice, you call it inspired aliveness, and you have a website that you just sort of rehauled or something. or maybe it's new, inspiredaliveness.com.
Yeah.
And you
A
have,
lot of good information on there if anybody's interested. Yeah.
yeah, you can go there and there's a lot there and you can say more about it. But I want to ask you, you mentioned 2 books. Please give us the names of the 2 books, what they're about, and what year they came out.
I love it. I have no idea when they came out.
Well, I'll tell you. Just give me the name.
I'll tell you the names. The first book that was published was called Ordinary Freedom, and I could kind of guess. Well, I don't remember when it came out, and I never really wrote them. They were edited talks and edited transcriptions of talks that I'd given in public teaching. Both of those books.
Yeah, it came out in July 2010.
Okay. And then the other one's called The Unbelievable Happiness of What Is. Now, I didn't want that title, and whatever. The title I wanted, David, was Beyond Belief, but it turned out that was the title of a book that a woman wrote who had, escaped and survived Scientology.
Oh, far out. Now, what was it published?
I couldn't use the title.
Right.
I had it in my subtitle.
What was it published under?
The Unbelievable Happiness of What Is, I think. There was a subtitle that was pretty good. I don't remember what it was anymore. Honestly, people benefit a lot, I guess, from those books. I'm glad, but I think what I'm offering now is current material, and it's really these online gatherings that people can come to for a minimal fee, like $20 anywhere in the world. It's so convenient. The thing that's amazing about David is that when the pandemic hit and I had to pull out of these retreats of private practice, which I've been doing for 43 years, I said to my team, I said, look, I'll try the online thing, and if the internet, then I'm in. And I said, if it doesn't work, I'm not doing it. And so I did. And people have been with me for decades who've been on tons of retreats in person, said it's not only as powerful, it may even be more powerful. And so who understands that? Nobody. But it works. And so that's all I care. I don't care how it works. I just care that it does work. So I think the current teaching that's coming through, whatever it is, I don't think about it ever. It just comes through and it keeps developing. That's where it's at. So if anybody's interested, they should check that out and see if they connect to it. If you want to read stuff, you can read it, or there's stuff. I don't have so much written stuff right now. I have tons of YouTube videos, and people can watch stuff. But even then, people who are students of mine now, have been students for maybe a couple of years, said they've gone through everything, and they said it's amazing how it's developed. I said, yeah, I don't know how that's happened.
Now, I see The Unbelievable Happiness of What Is, Beyond Belief, to Love, Fulfillment, and Spiritual Awakening by John Burney and Adyashanti.
No, he wrote the foreword, or he wrote the introduction.
Oh, okay.
He also wrote the
all right.
He wrote the introduction. He wrote the foreword to that book. He also wrote the foreword to Ordinary Freedom.
Right, I see
Aj
that.
and I are
we've
been close for.
I want to ask you about him, but first I want to say The Unbelievable Happiness of What Is came out in 2017. Now, tell us about Adyashanti and you.
Oh, well, we met. Oh, I don't remember when we met. 2000 maybe, and we just connected immediately. And we had a lot of. He had been a student, I think, of Bill Kwan.
Right.
Kwan, and I think he had some other teachers that I didn't know of that I can't remember the lineages.
He'd studied with a woman in Los Gatos.
Arvis Justy. I don't know who her teacher was, or what her background was, but we had mutual friends in Sedona. We had a bunch of connections, and we just developed a connection. And I would go to his things for a while, and then he eventually he wanted to acknowledge me as a teacher, and I kind of was resistant to it. And I said, I don't know. I said, both of my parents are dying. I'm completely preoccupied in their care, and I don't think I could handle anymore. He goes, so he used to call me the reluctant teacher, and because I was kind of didn't really want to be doing it, and I was avoiding it, right? And so when in 2008, I don't know if you know this, but I lost my entire life savings and inheritance in the Bernard Madoff scandal.
Oh, no.
And that's the money that was the money. I had a place in Bolinas, and I had this apartment in the city, and I thought I was never going to have to worry about work or money or anything, and it all disappeared like snap. And I sent an email out to everybody to let everybody know, and I, of course, got on that call the next day with the Securities Exchange Commission, my attorney, my certified public accountant, and Aja Shanti called me on the phone. He says, "Oh my God, you must feel like you got hit by a freight train." I said, "Yeah, it's really intense." I said, it's like all of a sudden there's a lot of money going out, there's nothing coming in, and I'm experiencing survival anxiety, and it's horrible. And now I know what a lot of the world lives like. And so then he says, "Yeah, it's horrible." He says, "Well," I guess you're now going to be forced into doing what you're truly meant to be doing, which was teaching. Because I remember when he first wanted to acknowledge me, I said, "I don't know." He said, "John, you have more integrity than anybody I have ever met. For you not to be teaching would be nothing less than holding back." That's what he said to me. And there's something funny about that, because it isn't really something I do. It just happens. And I think it isn't that I'm teaching. I think I'm always learning, and I'm sharing what I'm learning. That's really how it works. So it's like everything is trial and error, right? You're practicing, you've sat enough sessions to know that you kind of are forced to learn how to do them.
Mm-hmm.
and how you do them. And I remember when I was first a student and I was having so much pain and discomfort, and I was so envious of the people who were older students who were sleeping on their cushions. I just wished I could sleep. I was so envious. And then all of a sudden, I started falling asleep on the cushion. And I remember, I don't know why, but I actually, no kidding, this was a Zen center in the city. I was at a 7-day Sushina. I slept, David, through every single period for 7 days. I could not wake up. And it was horrible. I hated it, because every time I'd fall forward and the knees would grab, to keep you from hitting the baton or the divider, my knees were killing me. And it was kind of torture. And so it was funny, but then I seem to remember there was, I think, one big breakthrough in Zazen. One of the big ones was just this, I think my energy body, I just felt like I was completely twisted up in some weird pretzel shape, and I opened my eyes and I was perfectly upright. And I thought, what is this? And so I realized now it was the energy body doing whatever it's doing. And I finally just gave up and surrendered. And that's when things really started deepening quite a bit. And but I think the practice was essential for me to do all those years of Zazen and all those sesshins and everything else. And the intensive practice was really, really good for me. And I'm very grateful for that training. And I see now a lot of students, they have awakenings, they access really intense movements of energy, but their channels are not open. Their kriyas are blocked, their energy channels are blocked. And I have to give them basic training. I have to teach them how to do sitting. I have to teach them how to do meditation. I have to teach them how to work with posture. I do all of that stuff when it's needed, and I'm glad I have the background. But I'm just interested in how many people don't even have that. But all I can say is when you get to a certain level of development, you need to have it. Those yogic trainings and all the martial art trainings, all that stuff, I remember talking to Aj about this. I said, we invented meditation after enlightenment. We invented mindfulness after enlightenment as a way of dealing with it, as a way of living with it. And he said, that's totally right. And I think that this is what people think, that if they're going to meditate, they're going to get from point A to point B. And, what's that famous story of Basho, or his teacher, whoever it was, sitting down next to him, rubbing the bricks. He goes, "What are you doing?" He goes, "I'm meditating. I'm doing zazen. Why? I want to become Buddha." So he sits down next to him, he starts rubbing two bricks together, and irritating noise, obviously. And Basho looks over, whoever it was, I don't remember. He goes, "What are you doing?" He goes, I'm making a mirror." I love that story. And he goes, you can't make a mirror by rubbing two bricks together." He says, "Well, you can't become Buddha by meditating." And people go, "Well, what are we doing this for? What's the point?" The point is just to be here and pay attention. You don't have anything to do with it. It's like, do you make the sun rise? Do you make a redwood tree grow? No. But what does? See, that's what I'm teaching. I'm teaching what does, because that's the same with the inner process. The problem with a lot of the teachings out there is people think that if they have enough ego, they have enough willpower, they're going to break through and they're going to get to Shangri-La. No, that's not how it works. That's not how it works. And so it's really, we don't have any, there's no doing in it. There's no self in it. There's no ego in it. There can't be any concepts in it. It's really this realm of not knowing. It is beginner's mind. So when somebody has when people have moments of beginner's mind or periods of it, they are completely alive in this moment. And, you taste a strawberry and it's amazing, right? Or you just, your senses become more, it's like you're tripping. I was working, somebody in my gathering recently said, she said, "John, I feel like I'm tripping." I go, "You are." Life is a trip. It really is when you're not in the way. And so, yeah, my life gets more amazing all the time. And even though there's plenty of challenges and difficulties on relative level, just, health stuff, older stuff, money, all of it. I do the best I can trying to manage it. But, so that's, I'm kind of wandering around, but you're getting the gist of it, I think.
Yeah. Say, so.
You know what? Can I just say, David, I always loved you. I mean, I always thought you were so funny. And I sent you a note the other day that I was doing Zen vacuuming, and I know that I learned it from you in the flop room at Zen Center. And it was you were going around picking up little pieces of lint or something, and you said, "This is Zen vacuuming," and I thought that was hysterical. And I've been practicing Zen vacuuming ever since.
Well,
so thank you for that teaching.
Yes, I haven't had a vacuum cleaner now for a long time, right. But. So I have to do. I do use one of these sort of straw brooms.
Yeah.
And outside, and sometimes a sort of like a Western broom inside, but mainly our housekeepers do that, and I just watch.
Oh yeah. Right.
So. Now, I love it that Mike Murphy sent you to Zen Center. What year was that? Oh, you said 72, I think, or 3.
No, I think it was 73. Yeah, 1973.
Yeah. And where?
So that's when I first showed up.
Where'd you show up?
I became a guest student at Zen Center, and Tommy
at the City
Dorsey
Center
became his son. Tommy Dorsey and I immediately loved each other, and Philip also. Those two guys became my buddies right away, and Tommy, who became his son, was the guest manager then. So he was the one that brought me downstairs, and I stayed in. I don't know what that room is now, but that was where the guest students stayed, and there was another guy there who had been a Marine. And it was very funny because we did our first 40-minute sitting of Zazen, and we were sort of sharing notes afterwards. And you know what and I've quoted him many, many times over the decades at retreats and stuff. And he said that, I said, "How was it for you?" He says, "It was harder sitting 40 minutes of Zazen than it was to go through Marine boot camp." And I thought, thank you. Yeah, no kidding. Stopping and paying attention.
That's
being
great.
Still. Good luck.
It's great.
Good luck. Good luck. More now than ever, right? What's the average attention span of somebody? Like 2 seconds, 3 seconds? It's
Uh-huh.
pretty disturbing.
Uh-huh. Yeah. 73. I was at Gringos then, and 72 I was in the
Yeah.
city. So what happened?
But I think you were around. I saw you plenty, and I think you and I might have been at Tassajara Harbor at the same time.
Well,
I don't know.
yeah.
I still remember you were. But
We'll
I can't
get there.
remember.
I'll tell you whether I was there or not. What happened in 73? How'd that work out at Zen Center?
Oh, I became I moved into the neighborhood.
Yeah.
I became a student. I was, I wanted to practice. I wanted to become a student. So I had a job. I had a job on the outside. Then eventually I got a job working for Elias Titchery. Lanil Jones was managing it. It was right next to the Zendo back then.
Oh,
And
you
then
mean it was,
eventually
wasn't it over in the building next door in the basement?
No,
No, it
it was at Zen Center.
it was at the
No,
city
when I
center
first worked
building.
there- That's right. And then when I eventually, I think Ed Brown was the president. I was asked to become the man. Lanil went and studied with Trungpa. She moved to Naropa in Boulder, and they asked. I was sewing fat pants. In fact, meditation pants. And Oksan, Suki Roshi's wife, would have me make her fat pants with zippers, and she loved it. We used to sit next to each other in the Zendo all the time. And Johnson, she called me Johnson, and I would make her fat pants for her. And so I was sewing fat pants every day. And then I was asked to be the manager, and so I became the manager. And we opened up a sweatshop across the street. We bought that building, which was a disaster, if you remember, and transformed it. And we had the sweatshop on the top floor, and then they, Zen Center approached me, the board, whoever, and said, we want you to open a storefront on, it was the first time Elia made money when I was running it. And so they said, we want you to open a storefront on Cole Street near the bakery.
Yeah.
And so Edward Abadizian, who was this wild artist that was friends with Baker Roshi, and I worked on it together, and he had all this art stuff and whatever. And so I set up the first piece. And Ed said, you can't go to Tassajara until you open up that store. I said, okay, so let's get going. So we got it done, and then I went to Tassajara, and I don't remember what the year that was, but it was after the fire, after the Loma, the big fire that burned 180,000 acres in Los Padres National Forest, and I went there right afterwards, and I was there for the floods, and all of that, which was something. And so that's when the road was washed out, and it was something else to be there then.
You're talking about.
We did it.
What year are you talking about there?
Paul Howler, Paul. Paul and I were roommates our first practice period at Tassajara, and he was funny as hell. But
what year? What year was it?
76, maybe. I don't know.
I
think it might have been 76, somewhere around then. But we were after the floods, and the road from Jamesburg was completely destroyed. People couldn't get in or out. We couldn't get in or out for 6 weeks.
Yeah.
And so we were surviving there. And I remember Paul and I were out, and we had rain gear, like Helly Hansen, this yellow complete body coverage thing, and you'd be out working all day in the rain. And we were there down near the lower barn or something. I think that's what it was called. And in Tassajara. And all of a sudden we heard this rumbling, and it was like this slot machine of gigantic boulders started shooting out of the hill. And we fortunately weren't killed by it. And we saw this happen in just like a minute or 2 minutes. There was this giant pile of boulders there that took them years, I think, to clear.
Yeah.
But it was unbelievable.
Yeah, the big ones landed below the lower barn, right?
Yeah. And then I was actually the bath person that practice period. I was the bath attendant. And I can't remember his name. He was a work leader. Ted somebody. He was the work leader.
Ted Howell?
You remember?
No, Ted Marshall. Ted Marshall.
Really, maybe Ted. Yeah, really nice guy. And I was cleaning the baths or doing whatever the bath job was. And all of a sudden, I saw the water rising on the stream like really fast. And I said, Ted, get the hell out of the baths. He goes, okay, no, I said, now. And we got out of it. I swear to God, that thing went up. I don't know how the bridge, everything was knocked out in very short order. And the steam rooms were covered. Everything. It was unbelievable.
Huh.
It was unbelievable. Yeah, it was intense.
Well, you shouldn't have lost that
so
bridge because, that was like the third bridge washed out, and the one before it that had been put in, I don't know, 70. I'm not sure. It was made so it could be raised.
Well, I don't remember what happened, but and also I was there for the Zendo. I was the last person out of the Zendo when the Zendo burned down. And
That's 78. Yeah, it's 78.
Oh, I was there in 7. Yeah, I was there a couple of years. And so my eyebrows burned off. And I'll never forget when we were out there and they got the fire hose set up and it just dribbled. Nothing happened. And there was no pressure. And we got frantic and we got all pots and pans from the kitchen. And we all were like, we had lines of people throwing water on this thing to get the fire out. And so I was there for that and for the floods. It was an intense time to be down there. But hey, it was still Tassajara Sahara, and it was still amazing.
Yeah.
And I loved it. And then I was Baker Roshi's assistant for a couple of years, and I would go down there with him too. So I got to go back as well then.
Yeah. But, so what was your relationship with him? How was that?
Great. I mean, when everything crashed and burned, it was very sad and painful to hear about it all. But I never had a problem with him. He and I always had a really terrific relationship.
Yeah.
And still do actually when we're in touch, and love each other very much. And he was young and whatever, and I think there was a lot of things that weren't being communicated well, and sadly back then, and I wish they had.
Mm-hmm.
And I could say more about it, but I won't because I want to respect everybody in it. I know that it was very, very complex and multi-leveled, and I was already gone by the time that happened.
Yeah.
But I had already moved on before that sort of blew up. But I was close by, and I was pretty privy to a lot of it, and so I knew and heard a lot about it from him and other people, of course. And but no, in fact, we just became friends, really. And
yeah.
I think that my mom was supposed to meet this famous Qigong master in China who was very revered, and he heard about me, knew I'd been a Buddhist monk, and he really wanted to meet me because he had been a lama in Tibet. He did the 3-year training at Lhasa, and he was also a medical doctor, graduated in 1922 in Germany in dermatology. He was also a very famous Taoist master. Qigong master, and he was brought over here by Stanford University. The head of the Stanford Linear Accelerator, Martin Lee, brought him over here, and Stanford and Harvard were studying him because he could throw people at a distance with his energy. And so I met him and became a student, and I introduced Baker Roshi, and Baker Roshi said he was the most developed person he ever met in his life, and became a student. So he was in the same class with me down at my mom's house in Hillsborough, and I trained with him for about 3 years until he died. I was with him when he died in his hospital room at Parnassus. And
what was his name? What was his name?
His name was, his Chinese name was Pen Siyu, and it was Professor Yu. We called him Professor Yu.
How do you spell that?
Young Ming.
How do you spell that?
Oh God, good question. Pen I can't. I think it's like PENSI. It might be on my website. I think it's somewhere in my material in my bio. It's in there. I was a very close student of him for 3 years until he died. And he had 300 students instantly. He had the heads of every martial arts school in the Bay Area studying with him. But I once thought maybe I'm just being hypnotized and this is all just brainwashing or something, right? And so here's this guy in his 80s, little guy, and I'm a big guy in my, and I'm in my 20s, late 20s. And so I said, can I resist the energy, Professor Yu? And he goes, yes. And so there were about 10 people in the class when I did this. And I ran full force it was a little hard to do this, David, because, here's this old guy and I'm like going to run full force. And I'm running full force towards him. And about 10 feet from him, I hit a brick wall. It was unbelievable intense. My whole body, I instantly was sweating. Every pore in my body was sweating. I had turned beet red, and I was like completely drunk, completely stoned. And I was staggering around, and he starts laughing, and he comes over and he goes, "Oh, too much chi, too much chi." And he starts having his fingers kind of curled around. He starts like taking the excess chi out of my body. And I think it hurt me actually. And he had the ability to, let's say, take people out without touching them. One of those people, right? Very, very rare. And Stanford, still have the paperwork where Stanford and Harvard raised $1 million to do a documentary film about him. And I think Zen Center actually helped him with his immigration, he and his wife. His wife, Wu Yangming, she had been a Beijing opera star, but she was also a Qigong master. And so even after he died, she kept running the classes for people. And he was diabetic, and I think he'd been eating a lot of hidden sugar and food and didn't know it, and I think it put him right over the edge, sadly. But that's what we suspect.
Yeah.
So, but I learned so much from him, David, so much about, he would hold my hand and talk to me and say, "Now, don't tell anybody." He said, "People are going to ask you questions. Don't tell them." And we'd be waiting for his wife to get ready, and he would just somehow know when she was coming. He just said, "Oh, she's coming." I go, "How do you know that?" And so she would show up. And, but I remember he said, "This is what you're learning. This is for martial art. It is for healing, and it is for enlightenment. It is the same thing." And I get it. I really get it. And I think that, I think everything I've learned in all the areas I've been trained in, inner training and meditation training and healing work and healing arts, because I have a lot of training in healing arts and quite a range, not just Alexander, but a whole bunch of things that I just kept learning and growing and developing, that they're all interconnected. And so I couldn't have understood what he was saying then experientially in the way that I can understand it now. Deeply.
That's interesting. So,
yeah.
So did you ever live at Green Gulch?
No, I didn't. I only lived at the Zen Center in San Francisco. And then when I moved back from Tassajara, I moved into the apartment I'm in now, which I've been in for 45 years. And thank God I have rent control and have 2 garages for the cars we have, because I would have been homeless. Thank God I had this apartment, because people say, "You should buy a house, John." I go, yeah. I said, "I will. I'm not in any rush," because I had the money. It's like I could have easily done it. And it all just went poof, disappeared.
Oh, right.
Yeah. So I'm glad. So I've been going up and down these 3 flights of stairs for 45 years. And you know what? One of my assistants who I had for many years, she said, "I just want to go up and down stairs like you do." I said, "Well, it's really, honestly, it's never the same step." It's like people say, "Oh, I'm bored with following my breath." I said, "Well, then you're not practicing." Because when you're practicing, when you're truly practicing, there's just full awareness. There's no trying to get something. And so when you're paying attention to your breath, there's no breath that's the same. Never. You're not doing it. And so that's the real, but how do you not do it? You don't not do it. It happens by itself. And that's the natural unfolding process that I'm, I think, helping people trust more rather than feeling bad about the fact that they're not more enlightened than they should be because they've been sitting for 30 years. Nothing could be further from the truth. I don't know if you know who Ramana Maharshi was, but he was
of course.
Two of the teachers that I became very close to, actually. One of them was a guy in India named Kunduji, who then became Papaji. He was Gangaji's teacher.
Oh yeah, sure.
He invited me to come and be with him, and I don't know when he wrote me I have the letter he wrote me. He invited me to come in 1990, and I was with him for about 6 weeks. We had a wonderful time together. He was great. I loved him. And the other teacher I was also very close to and had an incredible connection with was Robert Adams, who was in Sedona.
Oh, really? Let's hear about Robert
yeah,
Adams.
Yeah, I could tell you. Oh, yeah, no, Robert and I, we were nuts about each other, and he didn't want me to leave. Yeah, we really connected. He was my favorite, totally irreverent like me. But my favorite story of Ramana was that, I think Robert told this one, was that
Ramana Maharshi. He died in like 1950.
Yeah, something like that. But when Robert showed up there, he was pretty young, because Robert had, like me, had a spontaneous awakening. I think he was 15 when it happened. I was 16, but he went and found Yogananda down in Paramahansa Yogananda down at the Self-Realization Fellowship in L.A. or wherever he was, Ojai. And he went to see him, and you know, good for Yogananda said to Robert, said, look, he goes, we're peer. He says, I'm not your teacher. He goes, your teacher's in India. And he sent him to see Ramana. That's how he was sent to see Ramana. I don't know if you knew that. And so he went. He was pretty young. I think he might have been 18 or something, but he was pretty young. And Ramana kind of took care of him. It was really sweet, the story. And
I didn't know that.
Ramana. Yeah, Ramana. In fact, he was in some little hut or whatever, little living space, and Ramana would bring him food. Would bring food to him.
Yeah, yeah.
And you know, he just took care of him. You know what Ramana's dying words were? His last words when he died. Did anybody remember to feed the peacocks?
That's funny. I've spent time there at the Ramana ashram in India.
Oh, far out. Yeah, some people there wanted me to come and teach there, but I never did. But my favorite story is it's one of his students who'd been with him for like 30 years or something said, you know, Ramana, I've been with you and everything. I still have all these problems. And he was complaining. You know what Ramana said to him?
No.
Try another 30 years. Try another 30 years.
I love Ramana Maharshi. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Beautiful. So, yeah, I have that. There's all these lineages, you know, they're like bandwidths that you just, that just are part of the whole thing. And I'm looking at a picture of him right now on my wall. And, yeah, what a being, right? And so...
Isan always kept a picture of Ramana Maharshi on the wall.
Yeah. Yeah, Isa and I we just were very close. I was very sad that he went when he did, but we were very close buddies for a really long time, and really loved each other dearly. Great guy. Great guy.
Yeah. Well,
I'm connecting with you, David. It's really delightful. Thanks for getting me going. For me, memory is just this. It's almost like I don't know. It's like a 3D. It's like a virtual reality time travel experience where I get to re-experience it again, and it's far out. Actually, I really
yeah. Well,
thank you for letting me trip in the so-called past, which is the present.
Right. You've had quite an interesting journey there. Now, you came from Hillsborough, which is a nice area.
I came from Burlingame, actually. We were very middle class. You know, my dad was in fabrics and had a warehouse, and we were forced out of our house because the landlords we were renting a house in Burlingame, and they wanted to move back in, so we had to buy something, and my mom found this dump in Hillsborough that was on the market for 7 years. Nobody wanted it, but she had taught at the New York School of Interior Design, and she knew how to do all redecorating and all that stuff. And so she knew how to fix it up. So we bought this dump that we fixed up, and we moved there. But I ended up moving into a very wealthy area back then. I mean, it was easier. It became very wealthy. But there were students there who were, we're talking old money wealthy. We're talking, American aristocracy. So all of a sudden I'd grown up with middle class kids and I was middle class. And all of a sudden I was surrounded by rich kids. And it was, well, one of my friends, Larry Watson, I was over at his house and we were playing. We were in seventh grade or something. And my parents had a print, like a Picasso print on the wall that they had framed. And I was, very interested in art. I was an artist, a musician, and I recognized the style. And there was like a portrait on, like a similar portrait on the wall. And I said, "Oh, that looks like a Picasso." He goes, "Oh yeah, Picasso did that on my brother." So his dad was friends with Picasso, right? That kind of thing. I like, this sort of thing, right?
Yeah, yeah.
But no, we weren't wealthy. We were not wealthy. We were middle class. But yeah, but Will Hillsborough now is, you have to be pretty rich to live there. And even Burlingame, which used to be completely affordable, you have to have a lot of money.
Yeah.
And a lot of areas, as you well know, I mean, it's insane how property values have gone insane in the Bay Area, San Francisco, the whole area. It used to be affordable to live here.
Oh, and very affordable. You didn't even need a full-time job.
No, it's sad. No. It's really, we have devolved economically, clearly.
Oh, yeah.
And it's sad.
Yeah.
It is really sad. It is sad. So anyway, that's that. We're all trying to do the best we can.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, is there anything you've left out?
I don't know. I'm just happy to be with you. I was just looking forward to talking to you. I was so happy to see you.
Yeah.
In Bali. We didn't have a lot of time there, unfortunately. I wish we'd had more time. We had a beautiful experience, the experience we did have. Love Thailand, amazing people and experience there, and yeah, let's just be together. Let me just see if there's anything. I'm just glad we're here together. That's all I can say. And I'm grateful for the fact that no love lost, even though we hadn't seen each other or talked to each other for a long time.
Yeah.
It wasn't like we missed it. I didn't feel like we missed a beat, if you know what I mean.
Right.
So I'd say we're on the same wavelength. Mm-hmm. And I'm glad to know that. I'm glad to know you're doing what you're doing and that you're keeping Suzuki Roshi's teachings out there in the way that you're doing. And I think that's awesome. And, I think he was so important in the development of consciousness in the world, in the West and in the world, without a question. And everybody who has been a part of that, all of us who've been a part of that, we're all part of something that's really, I hope, can help. Yeah, I think I do want to say something. I think that, I look at the world now and what's happening, and it's, there's a lot of ways you could look at it. But I would say it's not an easy place to be, depending on where you are and what's happening. And if I were really to simplify it, I'd say there's a lot of darkness emerging, and I said it's never been more important for the light to be supported, for consciousness, not unconsciousness, to be supported. There's so much unconsciousness that is running blind greed and hunger for power. And I just am going to do everything I can, as long as I can, to try to help them make the world a better place. And I can't get hooked into whether it's going to be sustainable or not or any of that. I know that it doesn't look good, but that's not going to stop me from planting seeds and
right.
fields.
Right. Well,
so that's it. So
that's right.
I'm one of those people. And I'm grateful. I am so grateful for all the love that I have in my life, and the gratitude I have in my life is mind-blowing for me, because I had nothing to do with it, and I didn't make any of it happen. And it's miraculous as it's unfolded. But, I spent most of my life being alone and feeling alone and misunderstood, David. And now I've never had more people who not only understand me, but are profoundly grateful. And it's like, how did that happen? And it happened through the School of Hard Knocks. and suffering greatly in endless ways where I had to learn how to face what was happening in my life and learn how to truly adapt. I remember when the Madoff tragedy, whatever, catastrophe happened, and then a month later I found I had an eye condition where I could go blind. And a friend of mine said when he saw how I was operating, which meant I just was really getting it together. In fact, you know the only person that offered me money, you'll never guess who?
Who?
Brother David.
Ah.
Even though I knew people who were very, very well off. They didn't ask if I needed money. They just said, "Are you okay?" But he said, "You need any money?" I said, "I can't offer you much, maybe $1,000, but after all, you're my brother. We're brothers." And so he did a benefit for me. We did a benefit together. We had 165 people come because he wanted to help raise money to help me. And so we did that together, and it was just a chance for so many people to meet someone like him that they'd never meet someone like him. And he had a giant line of people lined up afterwards that wanted to meet him because, let's face it, he's somebody you want to hang out with, and just a wonderful, loving being. And so that was, he came forward. How amazing is that, David?
Wow, that's really great. That's really great.
So a friend of mine said, "Wow, you really do walk the walk." And I said, "Well, is there a choice?" I've always been forced to face what is and learn how to manage and make it work. And so who isn't faced with that? Isn't that reality?
Yeah.
So I think that, I'm very grateful for the transformation that happened to me at 16, because if it didn't, I would have probably not survived. I don't think I could have kept living. There was a part of me that wanted to pull the plug. I couldn't do it. I can't do this anymore, is how I felt when I was 16. I was so desperate. And it was more ideation in a way, but it was kind of like, it's like, what's the point? And it was, the Vietnam War was going on. I could be drafted, all of it. It was a lot of stuff going on. And very difficult time. And then all of a sudden, my life had meaning and direction and guidance, and I didn't make that happen. So something shifted profoundly. The truth is, when I was in Sunday school as an 11-year-old, I was arguing about the existence of God with the Sunday school teacher, and I wasn't buying it. And I came home, and I told my mother I wasn't going to Sunday school anymore. I was too busy practicing the violin. She said, "Okay, honey." And I decided at age 11 that when I saw God, I'd believe it. And then I became an agnostic, and I felt that all my friends in all the respective religions were being brainwashed. But then I guess you could say at 16, guess what I saw? Guess what happened? The Big Bang. And I'm not kidding. I'm going to record. I haven't recorded. Some of that's written, but I'm going to record the full story because it was really unbelievable what happened and super intense. And I'm going to record that story. I'm going to pop it on my website when we get around to it, and because I know people will probably be interested in it. Because I think the motto of my life and the richness that's in it now and the fullness of it, which is amazing. I had nothing to do with it, and yet I have been literally guided to keep following the way that works for this individual incarnation. And I think what I'm showing people is how to follow that within them rather than something external, even though they might utilize external things, practices, teachings, that's fine. But it doesn't matter. That everyone has that intrinsically. It's built in. And so my work is supporting people and being able to access it and to allow it to guide them uniquely. I think that's a good thing to close with.
Yeah. Well, really fascinating.
No, none of us know how it really happens. That's the real truth.
Oh, I'm comfortable with that. Yeah.
Yeah, only, yeah, right. Exactly. Only ego. Exactly. Well, you've been around the block.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. That's the benefit of that.
Yeah.
So I just love knowing you, and thank you so much for inviting me to be on your thing and your podcast and stuff. And I hope some people can benefit from this, or if they want to come and check it out, they can come and check it out with what I'm doing. But you're welcome, certainly.
InspiredAliveness.com.
That's it.
And do you have your books listed on your website?
Yeah, in fact, I think they're available. I don't know if there's hard copies still available, but I have my original publisher is trying to retake them over so they can be in some people just love those books and really would hope that they're in print again. But I think they're available digitally. If people are interested, they can get them. So
you can get them.
I don't really.
You can get them. They're available on Amazon. I'm looking right now, and they're also available as Kindle. Yeah, so don't. You're talking about hardback. No, I don't see them hardback, but they're. Let's see now. Order Freedom. I only see Kindle for it right now, but Ordinary Freedom.
Yeah. Well, I don't have the bandwidth. I'm too busy. But my original publisher, I said, listen, his name is Julian Noyce. I said, Julian, if you want to take over, you can. If there's any profits, you can have them. I don't need them. I said, I'd rather you get the money. And I said, if people just want the books out there, I'm fine with it. But I'm interested. I'm too much on the cutting edge of what's happening in my work, and that's old material.
I understand. Yeah.
I'm not saying it's not helpful to people. Apparently it is. I'm amazed when people say, oh, I loved your book. It was so helpful. It's amazing. I'm going, good. I'm glad. Good. Glad to hear it. Maybe I should read it. Actually, you want to hear? I'll tell you one quick funny story. So when I don't know if you know Kenneth, but Kenneth Hogan he's worked at Spirit Rock. He's worked there forever now. But he was the editor of both of my books. And before we did the first book, he by himself put together a bunch of talks and published it as Ecology of Consciousness or something like that. It was like 50 pages. And there was a picture of me on the front. He had them printed at Kinko's, right? He gave me a box of these things. So I remember I sent one to Jack Kornfield, who I was very close to. And I think Jack left a 5-minute message on my machine how much he loved it. And then by then I was friends with Aja, and I was at one of Aja's gigs, and I was there with him. I said, here, look what Kenneth did. I said, I hesitate in giving this to you because I'm afraid you're going to steal my material. And he cracked up laughing. And so, I think he read it he had an hour break or something before the satsang he was giving. And, he was pulling big crowds in. And he comes out afterwards. He goes, John, you got, I said, I actually haven't read it yet. That's what I told him. I said, I haven't read it yet. He goes, you got to read this. This is great. Really
That's great. That's really good.
Anyway, those are just some stories, from infinite story treasure shows.
Yeah. Wow. So, listen, you're going to Europe. I'm going to Johannesburg I'm going to spend the whole month of September there with Richard Baker.
Where's?
And he's stepping down, and Nicole Baden is taking over.
He introduced me to her. He called me on FaceTime. I don't know, last year or two, and he goes, John, I miss you so much. I love you so much, and it was wonderful. He goes, I want you to meet my heir, and he introduced me to this woman, and I think she was German, and we met, and he told me what she was doing, so I knew he was doing that, and so, far out. Let him know that we chatted and everything. And are you going to his place in Germany? Oh, okay. Yeah, I've never been there. I went to Crestdown after William Irwin Thompson gave it to him, and he wanted me to come, and so I went there and did my own retreat many years ago, and spent a couple of weeks in Crestdown at his place there. Yeah. And I never saw the place in Germany. I heard it was pretty impressive.
Oh yeah, it is. It's great. Yeah.
Wow. Nice. Wonderful.
Yeah,
Well, I hope you have I hope you have a really good experience there.
yeah. I've been there a few times before. I was there for 4 months
Oh, wow.
once,
Oh,
and
far out.
for a month once. This will be a month. Yeah, they're bringing me.
Cool.
You know, I couldn't even buy the ticket.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
Um,
Are you doing a gig there?
no. Oh, I
You're just going to be practicing.
yeah.
Or just going to be hanging out. What are you doing?
Well, I always work. I work on websites, and this is a Grozi archive, and whatever I'm writing,
Oh, nice.
and I
Oh,
study some
nice.
German, so I can say a
Nice.
few things when I'm out. And I go to Zazen and do some chores.
Well, give him my love and say hi and all that. You tell him I'm going to see Brother David. And I had we had a limited trip that we didn't have a lot of leeway for where we were going. So
Yeah, I'm sure he'd love you to come.
how old is he now? God, he's getting up there. Anyway, okay. Listen, David. Big hugs, lots of love. Thank you so much. It's really enjoyed hanging out with you.
Yeah, no kidding. No kidding. This has been a pleasure. And you take care and you come back and visit
Thank
again.
you.
Yeah.
Anytime. Yeah, let me know. I'll be happy to. You take good care. Let
All
me
right.
know, and I'm happy to pop on a call with you anytime.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
So thanks a lot, John Burney. And let's remember his website is inspiredaliveness.com. Enjoyed talking to you, John. And until we meet again, this is DC Puba of Cuke Audio and Cuke Archives coming to you from Sleepy Sanur with Doggett Bandita, Feline Manus. But dear lovely Katrinka is not here for a week. She is in Raja Ampat, and I am jealous. She went with a friend. Google that and see what that is. It's over in Papua New Guinea, but it's islands. It's supposed to have incredible. Well, I've heard reports from people. It's one of the places that where the coral hadn't bleached out all the way, and all the and the marine life hasn't shrunk greatly in numbers, which is happening worldwide in many places. So it's supposed to be a really great place to go to. And she'll be there for a week. But I'm sure that we speak for her when we say that we're all wishing you and yours a grand awakening.